All right, so to start composing our melody, we need an instrument to play with. So I want to talk about creating instruments, creating tracks in general. So remember, these are tracks over here, and there's a bunch of ways to create them. The first way is the little plus icon, and it brings up this Add Tracks box. So let's quickly look at what's going on here. We have a name we can give to it. Now, I was in a session earlier today where I was recording a bunch of vocals, and the short form for vocals is Vox, so that's what I had it named. But now I might call it whatever, melody in this case. And below that we have the type. So this is what kind of track is it? Is it an audio track? Not in this case, it's an instrument track. You can also create automation tracks or even folders to store other tracks in. For our purposes, instrument is what we're going to be using most of the time. So we're going to be looking at this instrument track. And we get the little symbol next to it. That's the keyboard icon. How many do you want? Certainly not 16. I wanted 16 audio tracks when I was recording those vocals earlier today, but now I only want one. I don't need to have auto color on. That just means when you create a whole bunch of tracks, it will auto color them in a spectrum for you. Since I'm only creating one, it doesn't matter. The pack folder, that means if I'm creating a bunch of tracks, I can put them all in a folder as soon as I create them. In the process of them being created, a folder is created where they're stored within. This, of course, is the color of the track, so my melody, of course, will be this purple because melodies are always that color. And below that, we have your input. Now, input is basically where is this track getting information from? So the track is getting information from my keyboard in front of me, which is called the MPK88. You might be using a QWERTY keyboard. Easiest way to do it, all inputs. Then it doesn't matter. Whatever you have plugged in, or if you don't have it plugged in, it's still going to work just fine. So I'd recommend all inputs. If you have a whole bunch of different inputs and you, for some reason, wanted different things assigned to different keyboards, you would use this ascending, and it would work its way through the list. So if you had 5 tracks, or if in my case, 3 tracks, it would fill up all 3 of these options one at a time in an ascending order. We don't need that right now. And where is it outputting? Well, it's outputting to a new instrument. Since we haven't created one yet, there is no existing instruments, so we need a new instrument. And this brings us to an important point, which is that what we're creating here is an instrument track. We're not creating the instrument itself, though that does get created too, but it's possible to have an instrument track without an instrument. So an instrument track is just one of these, but it has MIDI data on it. The MIDI data, remember, doesn't make any sound. The instrument track doesn't make any sound. That MIDI data has to be output to some instrument, and that instrument is going to receive that MIDI data and then play the sounds back. So when we're going to do this, we say, okay, we don't have any instruments, so we need a new instrument to get created when we create this instrument track. And here we can say, what instrument is it going to be? Well, here we have a selection of them. I probably have a lot more than you do just because of my third-party plugins I have. But let's say we wanted to create a synthesizer, so we would choose Mai Tai. That's the end of the track, dialog box. Okay, here it is. It's called Melody. It's going to an instrument called Mai Tai. I can click this little button, and here's the instrument. So that's the first way to make a track. The second way is almost identical. You just push T instead of pushing the plus sign. Brings up the same dialog box. You do the whole thing over. That was T I pushed. Coming up here, we can do it this way. The track menu, add tracks, or T. It's all the same. Brings this thing up again. Now, say I created something I don't want anymore and I want this track to go away. Well, I can go right-click on it and I get a whole bunch of options. But one of those is remove track. Now, not so fast because this below it we see remove track and instrument. Remember, this track is not the instrument. So if I want to remove the instrument because I don't need it as well and the track, I need to use this one. So we could assign a keyboard shortcut to this if we want. This one is Shift T. By pushing Shift T, it will get rid of the instrument track, but it will keep the instrument. So another track could be created and then be output to that instrument if we wanted to. But in this case, I want to remove the track and the instrument. Now, the last way to create a new track, a new instrument, in maybe it's the most fun way, is coming over to the Browse menu. We're going to go to Instruments, and here I'm going to go to Presonus. I have a whole bunch of other stuff open here because I'm using some other instruments in different songs. And if I go to Presonus, which is the one you'll have, we see the instruments we can create. And here's Mai Tai. And what I can do is either go into MaiTai and click a sound from right here in the browser. Personally, I prefer to do it like this. I drag this over and see this blue line that shows up right here? That means I'm going to insert a new instrument track, or I can just bring it over here and drop it here as well, and I can stack it anywhere I want. I'll just put it right here, and there we go, MaiTai. Now, it doesn't give me a chance to name it and all that stuff like the track dialog box did, and I can only create one at a time. I can't drag something and say, oh, put 16 of these down. I can only put one down. But I could come over here, double click, name this melody, and here we go with the instrument we've created. It's all ready to go. Now, the next question is, which instrument would we create? If we're trying to play a melody, we want to create something that can play melodies. And like I said before, that's pretty much anything except impact, because impact is for drums. So MaiTai has things for melodies, Mojito can play melodies, Presence can play melodies, Sample One, you can technically, but I'm going to stay away from it right now. I would choose between these three. Remember, Presence is going to give you realistic sounds, like saxophone, trumpet, piano, violin, that kind of thing. Mojito is a monophonic synthesizer. It's really not nearly as good as MaiTai, but it does have some cool sounds. And MaiTai is really the way to go if you want a synth sound. So that's kind of our three options as to which instrument should we create to begin playing melodies. And in terms of playing melodies, we're going to look at that in the next video, where we're going to compose a melody for this beat we got going on.